So, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for our session around your journey to the cloud. What I'm going to do is we have a number of industry experts with us, but before I pass you over, I'm just going to run through some very quick housekeeping with you all, and then we will get into the good stuff. Just to let you know, the session will be recorded and made available to all of those who register today. Please ensure that your microphone is muted just for minimal disruption, but if you do have any questions at any time throughout the session, then you can use the chat box on the side of the screen to submit those questions, and we'll have a Q&A at the end to read those out. And there is just a short feedback poll that will appear at the end. So if you could fill that out, I'd really appreciate that. We use those this sort of information to help tailor our sessions moving forward. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Simon Walker, who is going to introduce the rest of the webinar and run through the agenda for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie, and welcome everybody, and appreciate you giving up your time to drink some wine and have some cheese and listen to some interesting topics around our AWS practice and some of our key core partners that we work with. So today we're going to be kind of taking you through a bit of a journey with a focus around Windows on AWS. So we have Stuart Molten coming up next to talk about that. Then we're going to have a wine tasting going on. Then I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of how we work with Amazon and how we can support you on the journey. And I'm going to touch on whether this is your first kind of engagement with AWS, all the way through to if you've been using AWS for 10 years and you need some support, and talking about some of the funding programs that are available. And then we're going to pass you across to NetApp Spot to talk about cloud optimization, which is our tooling of choice, and we're saving customers a lot of money using these tools. It's been incredibly successful since the launch of that. Then some more wine. By this time you should be pretty lubricated, and so be enjoying it all the more. And then we're going to move to Alert Logic, where Manny's going to give you an overview of our preferential choice of security on the MDR side of things, and then finally back up with Veeam, Regine Kroll, and then some QA at the end. So I'm going to send my apologies now, because I am going to be dropping off after my part, because I've been apparently structured that I have to go and pick up my children. I didn't know that before this starting, but apparently I was booked for it. So apologies for that, but I'll leave you in the capable hands of Matt Keeble. But for now, I'll hand over to Stuart.
Lovely. That's great. Hello, everybody. Let me just start sharing. Okay. I'm going to, can you all see those slides okay? Brilliant.
If you can make it the presenter slide, that'd be best.
Okay, I've got a horrible feeling it might cause a problem, but let's try it. It has previously. Can you still see that?
It's all working. Yeah, all good.
Brilliant. Great, thank you. I have had some bad experience with that previously.
I think it's still in normal mode, but we can see the slides.
Superb. So, hello everybody. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. So my name's Stuart Molten. I'm a partner development specialist in the Microsoft team here at AWS. Very exciting team to be in, because it's a very dynamic marketplace. As you all know, Microsoft is ubiquitous, has been around an awful long time, touches an awful lot of industries, an awful lot of, well, all industries, and all customers have Microsoft to a certain extent. My particular favorite is EC2, but we do work with databases, etc., etc. I'm part of a partner team which supports focus partners in the UK, and a focus partner in the UK is your atypical, it is basically Bytes, a safe pair of hands for you and for your organizations to go to, not just for the initial license optimization conversation, but I'll also show you part of the journey that Bytes can take you on. Bytes are one of our focus partners here in the UK. They have all the accreditations in the Microsoft space. They're supported by myself, my colleagues, both are on a funding side, which I think you'll be touching upon later, so we can provide funding for Bytes customers in order to make that move to the cloud and continue their journey to modernization. but also I've got a technical team behind me that can help as needed that customer in order to make their journey as risk-free and as expedited as possible, so the customer gets quick time to value when they move into the cloud and launch. Now, cloud transformation is accelerating. So this is something that has been impacted by COVID. Enterprises expected to use the cloud exceeded pre-COVID levels. I think that the awful pandemic brought home to a lot of companies that the structure and the infrastructure was inflexible and needed attention. The idea of scalability, et cetera, really brought home to a lot when we were all in lockdown. You know, the idea that the infrastructure needed to be cloud flexible and perhaps then moving on to cloud native technologies. Enterprise applications and data are driving a lot of that. A lot of that's being driven onto the public cloud, and in the next 12 months, more than 50% of that we expect to be on that public cloud, as per Flexera's 2021 State of the Cloud report. So we've got a movement to the cloud, and it's all for good reason, and that's part of the reason I'm here to talk today. Is not about just the move to the cloud, but how you then make the cloud in AWS work for you and work with a partner like Bytes in order to get the most out of that. So all customers come to us with a handful of competing priorities, be that digital transformation and and making the changes in order to keep up with their own dynamic markets, agility and staff productivity, which was brought home by the COVID pandemic, improved operational resilience. AWS is famous for its operational resilience across our regions and across our territories, going global quickly, mergers and acquisitions. IoT and machine learning is extremely important because that gives you an essence of AWS and the services that AWS can provide that can take customers into areas that the on-site, on-premise data centers could never adapt to fast enough. Data center consolidation, we're seeing an awful lot of that. One company that I've been talking to have been seeing 50% of their activity has been around moving people out of data centers and into the cloud, and outsourcing changes around end of hardware, end of support, end of life. Most of it is driven by cost reduction. The unfortunate thing is, through no fault of their own, many customers and organizations don't understand what those cloud options are. They have on-site investments that are the technical investments that need to be taken into account in business cases. They're not sure what they have in the environment, et cetera, et cetera. So licensing becomes a real issue, particularly in the Microsoft space, as many customers over the years have invested in the top-end enterprise licenses that they've been offered. They're not sure what zombie servers they've got. They're not sure what licenses are over-specced. They're not sure where to make those savings. A lot of customers assume that a Microsoft application needs to sit on Microsoft Azure, and that is just not the case. So it's extremely important to make that point up front, and you'll see that AWS actually has more experience in the Windows space than Microsoft themselves, because we've been supporting it longer. The other advantage you get with the AWS conversation is that we're already hosting 2 times more.
Stuart, sorry to interrupt you there. Your slides aren't showing, they're not moving on. I'm not sure if they're supposed to be, or.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've just got
the. There we go. Yeah, that's moved on now. Well, we can see the strategic workloads one.
Okay, can you see that one?
Cloud transformation.
Okay, I will
91%.
give a quick catch up. I've had that problem before. Unfortunately, we can't solve it with Zoom. So cloud transformation accelerating, applications and data are key. The competing priorities we've talked about, customers don't know what their challenges are, and Bytes can help you with that. And then we have the strategic workloads that I was just about to talk about. AWS handling two times more Windows Server instances than any other cloud provider, but also AWS can support in these other areas, SAP, VMware. My team is merging now with our VMware team. So we're bringing to the market, we're bringing to our partners joint VMware Microsoft propositions, which is extremely interesting. But as you can see, AWS is supporting all the main areas that are infrastructure needs inside an organization. Typical customer journeys, Bytes will help you with the assessment phase. You can look at the licensing in your Microsoft area, work out what's efficient, where we can save money, etc. Then you can be helped into the migration phase, so de-risking that migration and actually moving into the cloud, moving strategically so that the most important applications, the most viable applications are moved first onto EC2 for Windows, and then optimizing those applications so you're not moving like for like, you're actually looking at where savings can be made. The cream on the cake is modernization, which is moving away from core Microsoft licensing and into cloud. Used to be called cloud native. I still use that term myself sometimes, but moving away from that core Microsoft licensing, so you're not subject to support costs and to the swinging costs that you sometimes get with Microsoft licensing. Support-wise, I wanted to draw your attention to this because this is something Bytes are particularly hot on at the moment, but we have an end of support coming up for SQL Server 2012. And that end of support is the 12th of July this year. So many customers are realizing that there are extended support options from Microsoft that are extremely expensive. And this is making them look at the cloud and look at AWS. But also, if you look down below that, you'll see that this is not the end. We have other end of support timetables. We have a timetable coming up, 10th of October 2023. End of support for Windows Server 2012. So that's going to cause the same sort of issues now, and companies are planning ahead. When they move to AWS, there are cost savings to be had. 19% there in reduction in overall infrastructure IT spend, moving to AWS for all customers, and 27.4 there from our own benchmark in reduction in overall spend per user. But also then with applications, those savings grow. So the scalability on AWS really pays dividends. We have a breadth and depth of services which allow customers to get into new market spaces by using our services, which wouldn't be available with on-premise. And we also have huge reliability, better performance, particularly in SQL, which I've just talked about was end of support. Price reductions and longer supporting Microsoft Windows workloads than Microsoft themselves. Gartner recognizes AWS as a leader for the 11th straight year in the top right box there of their quadrant. So we're continually delivering there. And all of this data that I've just given you is backed up by case studies, which you can find from myself or AWS or through Bytes. And then finally, a customer case study. Dow Jones, I really enjoy this one. They cut their database expenses by 50%, moving to the AWS cloud with minimal disruption. Again, working with a qualified and accredited Windows partner, just like Bytes, and they cut costs by over 50%. I have other examples of case studies like this in different areas. If you have a particular one, please let me know, and I'll support Bytes in getting that case study over to you. There you go. I think I'm pretty much on time. Apologies for the technical hitch there. I have had it before. Anything you need from me, please, there's my email address there. And also, of course, you can contact Bytes and I'll support them in whatever you need. Right now, I'm going to hand back over to Kevin. Kevin, over to you.
Thanks, Stuart.
Hi. So we're going to talk about cheese and wine.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. So I'm not sure if you've had a chance to start or whether you're going to keep this for a little bit later, but hopefully you all received 3 beautiful bottles of wine, a nice selection of cheese, some crackers, some fig paste, and a little bit of salami as well. I'm joined here by my great friend Enrico Fantasia, who selects all our wines and works with all the vineyards. Hi, Enrico.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, everyone.
So we've only got 10 minutes before you get back to real work, but I'm going to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about the cheese we sent you for your pack. So, and then Enrico will talk a little bit about the wines. We selected 4 cheeses. Now, as it happens, we didn't select them with any particular theme in mind, and just a nice combination of what's really good at the moment. It happens that 3 of them are Irish, just because Irish farmers cheese is so great, and we've 1 French there as well. So you've got this beautiful, which I've started munching. Let's see, it's always hard to get the focus on the camera, but this one here, Cremo de Bourgogne. Now this is a beautiful, quite a simple cheese in one way. It's only matured for a few weeks. It's got this lovely white downy rind on it. And it is in the same way as a camembert would or a brie, but it's a triple cream cheese. So it's got extra cream added when it's been made. And it gives this absolute beautiful richness. If you've tried it yet, you'll really get it. So quite a simple taste, almost yogurty. Then with that rind, you get this kind of white mushroominess, and then this rich creaminess as well. So that's really lovely one. This one, you've got, again, trying to get the focus, is Gubin from West Cork, and it's in beautiful condition at the moment. This style of cheese, we nicknamed it washed rind, and Gubin, Duras, Malines, all from West Cork, Irish farmhouse cheeses made in this way. They're not as soft as bries and camemberts, but they have this active rind on the outside, which is made of different microflora. And this time of the year, those microflora are really active. As well as that, you've got all the cattle on the Gubin farm are out on fresh grass for the first time after the winter. Combination of those two things makes for great cheese in this style. So it's beautiful at this time of the year. Gubin has been made down in West Cork on the Ferguson family farm since the late 70s, early 80s. So almost 40 years in production down there. Beautiful cheese, more complex than the first one, kind of a nuttiness and earthiness to it. Lovely smooth texture, but I'd say not too soft. Beautiful cheese. Staying in County Cork, we've got Hegarty's cheddar, which is made by the Hegarty family, Dan in particular, and he's been making traditional cheddar down there for about 15 years on the family farm again. So all the milk, again, like the Gubin, is coming from their own farm, and they make their cheeses there just during the summer. So they only start making cheeses when the cattle are out on fresh grass. They don't make it during the winter when the cattle are on silage. And they make it to a traditional cheddar recipe, and then they mature it in cloth. And you'll see at the edge a kind of dappled rind. We've actually taken the cloth off before we cut it and sent it to you, but it gives another dimension of flavor. Really lovely, more complex, more to it than, you know, the more industrial style cheddar that we're more used to in Ireland, but a beautiful cheese. And again, this is aged for a lot longer than the first two cheeses. Different style of cheese making completely, and you get sort of more richer kind of flavors, more cooked flavors, brothy flavors, things like that. Then you've got a wonderful Crozier Blue, which is from County Tipperary. So we're still in Munster. And this is made by the Grubb family. Now, they're very famous for making Cashel Blue, which I'm sure if any of you are interested in cheese at all, you'll have heard that. And Crozier Blue is very similar to Cashel Blue, but it's made with sheep's milk. And sheep's milk, you know, Roquefort is always made for sheep's milk, the most famous blue in the world. So it does work. And when they use sheep's milk, it gives kind of a richer, more richness to the structure of the cheese. It also allows us to mature it for longer. Well, it's still keeping a balanced cheese, but it is more intense than the Cashel Blue. So still has that sort of sweet, syrupy, salty creaminess, but a little bit more intense than Cashel. Again, beautiful Irish cheese. So there are your 4 cheeses. The way we love to do this when we're tasting them ourselves is, you'll find interesting, if you are opening all 3 of your bottles at the same time and eating the cheese, is try each of the cheeses with the 3 bottles. So have a piece of Gubin, whichever one you're trying, try with the Frizzante, try with the white, try with the red, and note how the cheese changes with each of those. And then the next cheese, and you'll note how the wines change. The combinations are really interesting. Some you'll find the combinations, okay, not very interesting, but there will be a couple of combinations in there which are amazing. Enrico, tell us about the wines.
Yeah, well, the wine that I selected for today are, well, we start with the white. We are in Languedoc, in the south of France. It's a classic blend of Vermentino, Chardonnay. There is a bit of Viognier and Colombard, and is one of my favorite wines to pair with cheese, because there is richness, there is roundness, but without being too heavy. There is a nice touch of acidity. There is no oak, so this wine is fermented in steel vats. And that's what I like when I select a white wine to go with cheese, because the softness and the roundness, they work with pretty much every cheese. The fact that there is no vanilla taste from the oak is, again, another plus. And that touch of freshness and the acidity and the spiciness, brilliant wine to go with cheese. It's produced by a very famous producer. Is the little brother of Mazda de Masgassac, that is the iconic wine from Languedoc. So they have quite a long history in winemaking, and they work with low intervention. So is a wine that is produced in a kind of old style. Then we have the red. We are in Italy with the red. Is a Merlot from Umbria. Kind of unusual Merlot. If we think that generally Merlot is this rich and plummy kind of wine with loads of alcohol, etc. Here is all about freshness. Again, only steel vats in the
Enrico.
Yeah.
Really, apologies for jumping in there, but we're going to do a different session just so that we can stick to time. We're going to talk about the white, and we'll taste the white wine, and then we're going to do a couple of sessions now with Simon, and then when we jump back onto the next session, we'll taste another. So maybe we can go into the red wine on the next session if possible.
No problem. Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt there, but
no problem.
Keen to stick to time, as there's a lot of content to cover. So Simon, maybe I'll hand back to you.
Perfect. Yeah. Cheers, Matt. Thanks for that on the wine. I'll just share my screen now. Just confirm when you can see it.
Yep. All good on presenter mode.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So so as I mentioned, what I'm going to do is just position us as a practice. So some of you may know Bytes, and typically Bytes has always been known as a large Microsoft partner. We launched the AWS practice just over 4 years ago now, and we've quickly become one of the fastest scale partners for AWS, as Stuart mentioned. And we're seen as very much kind of the leading light around Microsoft workloads, and that just comes from our heritage of really understanding licensing, which is obviously an art in its own right. But in terms of who we are with Amazon, we're an advanced consultancy partner. So what does that mean? That means we've got a whole bunch of architects. We've got a team of around 46 people just dedicated to AWS, ranging from DevOps to architects to FinOps specialists and security specialists as well. We help customers in the whole life cycle of their projects, which I'll go into a bit more detail. In terms of billing, we're a solution provider for Amazon. That means that we bill on their behalf, and then Amazon essentially fund us to do a whole bunch of wraparound services around optimization, security, and cost-saving initiatives. We've carried out hundreds of migrations now over our customer base. And one of the big things we're really proud of is the sheer amount of funding we achieve. We built the practice around leveraging Amazon's amazing funding programs, which allow us to support customers to really kind of hammer down that TCO, which often organizations that are looking at the cloud, a big preventer is, well, how are we going to get there and how much is it going to cost? Because the team off the bat don't necessarily know Amazon, so they need a lot of support, hand-holding and training, and that's where essentially the funding comes in, paying for the consultancy architecture work from us as a partner, and also doing hand-holding and training. And we achieved around $2 million last year in funding to helping customers, and I'll go into a bit more detail on that a bit later, how that actually works. We've won an award 2 years on the bounce for Windows migrations, so Amazon gave us that award, so really proud of that. We also have added in the last couple of years the 24/7 managed services and support offering. So we're an actual enterprise support partner for AWS. So we can offer Amazon enterprise support for the same price you would pay for business support, and that's completely endorsed by AWS. And again, that factors really importantly in customers, particularly if you're looking at enterprise discount programs and the like as you go further down your journey. So in terms of kind of supporting the AWS journey, I mean, often you see these slides, but in reality, the way we've built the practice, it enables customers to jump on at any point, depending on if you've already got a deployment in AWS, maybe you're trialing it, or some teams are looking at it, all the way through to if customers have been using it for 5, 10 years, we've got services for you as well. So if we start from kind of the assess phase, so I'm going to go into this in more detail because there is a specific funding program that pays for an organization like Bytes to come in and do a full TCO engagement at no cost to the customer, where we deploy some pretty intelligent tooling across the estate, and our architects are aligned to build out a full 360 view of what it's going to cost, how much it's going to cost to migrate, what the cost is going to be when you're in the cloud. And what we see is customers taking that to their board, to their teams, and then giving them a full picture of where the art of the possible could be. And in the event that you say, actually, yeah, that is really interesting, we want to move to the next stage, we have a discovery phase where we then scratch the surface a bit more. We start doing some migration risk assessment planning to look at your current skill sets that you have in there, where the gaps might be, and how potentially managed services and support and a partner-led enterprise support can factor in to support that journey, just to give you that kind of further comfortable feeling that this is the right decision. And then if that's still, the way you guys want to go, then we can look at mobilize. So the mobilize is a critical phase where we actually start architecting the platform out in terms of what it's going to look like, what the security is going to look like, go in depth around landing zones, governance. We also do a pilot at this phase as well. But each and every one of these steps, which is fully funded typically, you're not committing at this stage. So although it's been funded, a lot of organizations then feel like they have to kind of continue on the journey, and they absolutely don't. So what we like to say is, like, just keep on stepping stones through the journey to the cloud, because it is a big decision. It is a disruptive decision to move into the cloud. So we want to kind of take you there step by step. Once you get through the mobilize phase, you've done the pilot, you've got the plans, and the team and the comfort levels have increased significantly, because you can really see and visualize what it's going to look like. That's when we move into the migrate phase. The migrate phase is effectively the bulk of the migration, and again, we will apply for funding for that phase. But the journey does not stop there. And if you've already done the migrate phase, this is where you would jump on to our services, and that's around modernization. So Amazon have modernization programs and funding around that. So if you've got a monolithic application that you've really kind of scratched your head about how you can break that down into more cloud native services, then the Modernize program's for you, because it allows us to do deep dive assessments with our architects and dev teams to look at how we can break those down, look at cloud native services, really drive the costs down, make those applications more agile, and using kind of modern technology that's available to you in a cloud platform like AWS. And then the ongoing kind of services that just never ends. It's just the cost optimization. We're always looking to drive your costs down with various tooling, and you're here today from NetApp, one of those tools that we use to really drive customers' costs down. And then finally, it's that managed services. Our managed services are completely agile. They're not long-term contracts. They flex up, flex down based on what you need. Some of our customers have got thousands of servers. We don't base our costs on how many servers you got or the size of your architecture. It's about how much time you need from our engineers, from that 24/7 team. So it can be as flexible and as agile as you need. Moving the slide on. So in OLAs, I mentioned OLAs, migration assessment is the first step. Very low touch in terms of your team's involvement, but huge amounts of value. And I guess the takeaway for today from this part of the presentation is get engaged with us to do one of these OLA assessments of your platform. When you're looking at migrations, there's lots of different ways that you can do it, and we see it depending on where customers are in their journey. You might have just an application that you really just want to get off on site and scale it in the cloud, or you may want to completely re-architect it, completely refactor it. But what we normally see is kind of a hybrid. We kind of like what we call a lift and shift with an element of optimization, because it's disruptive enough moving. Trying to refactor and change and do everything else whilst you're moving can be a step too far. So typically, but does depend on the workloads that we're looking at. If it's a typical migration, we'll look to assess the current estate, what it looks like now. But there's no point taking dead weight. There's no point taking storage that you're never going to use because you're going to be paying for it. So we can do an element of deep dive on that, but also we'll optimize those workloads. So if, for example, you've built very high performance servers, but you're only using 10% of it, we'll right size that down. So the picture that you get at the end of that, the cost will be more in line with what it's going to look like in the cloud. And that allows you to get that picture. When we're talking about the costs as well, we also talk about some of the benchmarking that we see in this industry. And when we talk to customers about how much it costs in the cloud versus on-premise, you can't just necessarily look at apples for apples, because it certainly isn't apples for apples, because you're doing a lot more in the cloud. And one of the things just to call out is that business agility. So it's using kind of some of the DevOps tools within AWS is where we see customers can all of a sudden release code a lot faster using all the tooling available. Resiliency, uptime is increased significantly, which again kind of increases staff productivity. So this is just a quick example of what you'll see when we do an assessment. So this particular customer had 407 servers that we analysed. We get all the data in terms of capacity usage across the estate. And then we essentially build out this cost summary so we can actually understand how much it's going to cost and look at the different licensing options within the tool. So just taking it from the top here, you've got this particular customer. We've given them a 1 year, no upfront reserved instance, which is covered by 65%. So RIs are how you procure at a discounted level within AWS, and you can commit 1 year, 3 years, you can do all upfront. There's loads of different ways that you can do it, and we work out based on your commercial requirements what best fits you. We also look at doing a bit of a license deep dive assessment to work out which licenses you can bring across, which ones you're going to leave behind, which ones you're going to use on demand, and then eventually we'll get to that pinpointed requirement of what your estate's going to look like. We also look at backup and DR costs as well, because that is a fundamental part of it, which a lot of other partners that we know out there don't do that. They just give you the frontline price, and it's like, well, you know, you're going to be backing up and you're going to probably have some element of DR in there. So we do include that as well. We also do an estimated spend over the first year, because that's critical. When you're looking at budgeting, nothing's going to be moved. It's not like buying tin where you buy it immediately and you know, you've got that cost sitting there. With the cloud, obviously, you scale up into that cost. So although this customer's estimated at potentially 2 million a year, that first year is probably only going to be 500,000, because it's going to take. So when you've got a data center cost and you're running in parallel the AWS costs, you can see how that kind of maps against each other. So it's not a complete double hit where you're running two centers in parallel. And then we make a load of observations around what the usage is. We're building growth, we're building storage growth. So at the end of it, the goal is that you've got that very detailed picture of what that's going to look like in the costs. And this is just a quick overview of the funding. So the funding programs have changed in the last 30 days. So WMP has gone and they replaced it with a product called Map Lite. But essentially, you can kind of see the kind of funding that this particular customer got. So they got $925,000 worth of funding for this particular migration, which essentially kind of nullified their costs to the extent that they had around £250,000 pounds worth of funding left over after the migration itself, which just goes towards training, support services, again, just to lessen that kind of impact of actually migrating. And really this slide just kind of calls out that there's massive opportunity if you know how to apply for it, know how to manage it with AWS, and they're very supportive of customers doing this because they know it's a cost moving to the cloud and they want to kind of help with that. So you can see the funding there is significant for these types of projects. So in terms of the actual approach, what I've just gone through there is this assessment phase and the tools we use, such as Cloudamize and TCO Logic, which is Migration Evaluator now. Once we've done that, we've talked about the mobilize phase where we actually start going to discovery and planning. So we do each of these steps, working with your teams, working with your network teams and your app teams, and building out the plan, building out the architecture, every step of the way, working with the customer. And then we get to the migrate and then modernize phase. This just gives the customer an example of where they are on the journey. We even estimate the amount of time is needed for your teams to support us. So again, you can see this customer initially, the OLA assessment, a couple of days, that's probably an overestimate. It's really just deploying the agents. So it's probably like 3 or 4 hours over a couple of days. And then we move into kind of the mobilize phase, and that's 1.5 weeks for the server team, similar for network security. And as you move into the migrate phase, that's where we do need some further times for a scale of this project. So you can see all that can be factored into the costs of the migration itself. And then we give an estimated timeline, and this can be accelerated with more people, but we typically work with the speed of the customer as opposed to our own timescales. And this is all obviously documented by the hour. And tracked. This is kind of very high level assess and mobilize plan of how it all gets broken down. And then we break everything into wave migrations. So each of the groups that we create in the migration will be broken down with the associated databases and network connectivity, move, test, cut over, rollback plan, tested, all happy, move ahead. So it's all kind of managed to a very granular detail. And then we just kind of give an idea of, what are the next stages. So if you did go through this assessment with us, typically we say, that's going to take 3 or 4 weeks to go through that assessment phase. Off the back of that, we'll then be able to move you into the mobilize phase, which is produce a statement of work, apply for the funding, get approval. So within about 4 to 5 weeks, we can be in a position to actually kind of kick a project off, assuming all resources are aligned and you're good to go. So that's me. So thank you for your time on that. Obviously, if there's any questions, just please shout out. I've got to drop off now, but appreciate you coming today.
Thanks, Simon, and good luck with the school run. I'll be taking over from here with just some doing the emceeing a little bit, and without further ado, I'll hand over to Carl Gridley, who'll be talking about the spot services, which we found really, really interesting and exciting over the last 6 months or so since our partnership. Over to you, Carl, and I can see your screen.
Awesome, thanks very much. I'm Carl Gridley. I work at Spot, a partner organisation with Bytes, working mainly in the FinOps space with products that save people money, but also FinOps is about making money, right? So it's about saving money here, but then maybe finding out where you should be spending money to make more. The economics of the cloud, or like the IT procurement model, is vastly different to what people have done on premises. It's almost the complete opposite in many respects. If we compare on-premises infrastructure with very centralized procurement, people making business cases, buying a big lump of kit, that turning up in say 6 weeks. In the cloud, what you have done is pushed all of your procurement to engineers, people building products, product teams, developers and so on, who are now going to be directly buying in small amounts, lots of infrastructure from the cloud vendor. And they're empowered to do so, right? You want them doing that. That's the cloud. This gives you benefits for velocity, time to market, things like that. But it means it's tougher and more complicated to get a handle on what you're spending and why. The second big difference for the cloud is immense variability. So in the cloud, on a daily basis, even by the minute or the hour, your cost model will be changing as resources are created and destroyed, taken away, new ones built, as utilization goes up and consumption goes up or maybe comes down. Compare that to the on-premises world where you would buy a big chunk of infrastructure. You would have a 3-year plan before you might want to grow that again, and you would be focused on capitalizing it and using it. This gave you quite predictable budgets and forecasts and cost models, which just doesn't apply to the cloud. So you have to adapt and be able to cope with that variability in spending. The third component, again, one of the key values of the cloud is scale and scalability. So when things go into a cloud, they can scale up with the workload dramatically. Products and projects can really take off, right? Be super popular and get massive. But also folks in the business are able to spin up lots of infrastructure. Because they can make things a bit bigger and a bit safer to start with, there's a big habit of over provisioning, right? Developers, infrastructure guys will just make something just a little bit bigger so as they're happy that it's going to run really well. And at an aggregate level, all these little bits of over provisioning add up to a considerable amount of waste that can be hard to manage and understand. And so in the cloud cost optimization landscape, a bunch of solutions have appeared. And I try and put them into sort of 3 buckets, essentially. You have people, right? Consulting services in the top right, smart DevOps folks, FinOps people that you can get in to help you optimize your services and bring their experience. Then you have the cloud management platforms, they're on the left, which let you understand what you've got, help you show back, charge back, get best practices recommendations, give you that view of your cloud in a way that helps you really understand and optimize it from that perspective. Then on the bottom right, this is where Spot really comes into play, is automation. So just having a big to-do list from your CMP isn't necessarily super useful. So we're going to come in and the things that we manage will be optimized automatically, both on the day you put them in and 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line. It's not just a one-stop kind of thing. Now, all of these products work together. So by automating that optimization, we free up staff time, right? The consultants, your own staff, to work on other things that the CMP is telling them about. So these 3 models are very complementary with each other. And Bytes, working with us, can offer you that full spectrum of solutions, right? You've already heard about the great people they've got and the services they have a CMP service they can deliver as well. And then Spot can come in and automatically optimize a whole bunch of the workloads to free up people's time. Talking to FinOps guys at the FinOps Foundation, you can get a view of what the toughest challenges are, right, in controlling costs in the cloud. By far and away, the biggest one is getting engineers to take action. And sometimes that will be just because they're a bit defensive, they don't want to take recommendations from someone else. Most of the time, there's just not enough engineer hours available, right? Everyone's got lots to do. DevOps guys have a big list of things to deliver. The business wants them to do more stuff. So it can be hard for them to take action. Understanding costs, right? Reducing waste in a physical way can be tough, in a manual way. So what we argue is automate as much of it as possible. And the cloud is about automation to a great extent. Things should be automated that can be, and people should be working on things that can't be automated. And we can deliver a spectrum of solutions here that's going to check these boxes. When you consider how you want to control costs in the cloud, you can kind of simplify a cloud bill down to a very simple calculation, and that's usage times rate. So how much you use something and what you pay for every moment that you use that thing. But they take place in very different areas. So your usage, how long something is on for, is decentralized. That's managed by DevOps teams because they understand the applications. They understand the infrastructure. They can make the technical changes. They know when things can be scheduled to turn on or off. They understand concepts like auto scaling. So for example, if you've got a web heavy infrastructure, lots of users come on a particular time during the week, you'll scale your infrastructure up for that workload, and then you scale it back down when you don't need it. So they control the usage, but when you think about the rate, how much you pay for your cloud vendor, your cloud resources, that's centralized. So procurement teams, FinOps teams, people who can negotiate, people who have that view of the strategic estate, so they can apply reserved instances, committed usage, they can apply savings plans because they have that high level view of all of the aggregate resources at any one time. What NetApp are going to do is bring in a portfolio of solutions that plug into different places in the business as appropriate. So we've got things that will help the DevOps folks control their usage in an automated way that they're going to love. It's not going to make their lives harder, make it easier, but then we can provide FinOps as a service with Bytes into the center of the organization and free up your FinOps folks' times. Bring that in. Some companies won't have a FinOps function at all, in which case they can take advantage of this. Compared to conventional ways of doing it, someone might revisit their commitments, once a month, for example. An automated service like Eco is looking at your environment every 2 hours and making constant tweaks and adjustments to have that portfolio exactly right for you. Then what ties this together as a beautiful commercial model is we win together. So the portfolio is based on success, a portion of that savings. And that means from a customer perspective, we're always linking the value of the platform directly to the value that you get from it as a customer. And that means the ROI for these kind of products is going to be more or less instantaneous. So as you start to explore the FinOps world in the cloud, right, the FinOps cycle, going through from inform, optimize, and operation, Bytes and Spot will be with you every step of the way on the journey, right? Bringing in visibility for the inform phase, executing, actually automating the optimization, the optimize phase, and then monitoring and again, reinforming through operate and inform. As we go round and round and we get better each time, with the customer. FinOps foundations say, consider, investing in automation that's already been built. Building your own automation for stuff like this isn't free, and there's almost always better things that your engineers can be doing. So when you factor in that and the fact it's outright going to save you money, we're going to save you money and your people's time together with Bytes. That, I think, is me coming in on time and ready for your next bit of wine and cheese.
Thank you very much, Carl. Just to reiterate, the success of this service it's been really, really successful within our company and something that we'd love to, as you are taking that journey to the cloud, implement at an early stage so that you do have that control of cost, which is really, really important. So I'll hand over to Kevin and Enrico again briefly just to talk about the next wine, and then we'll get on to the next speakers.
Yeah, here I am. Well, briefly on the white, I was trying with the different cheeses, and I think that it worked really well with the Cremant de Bourgogne, but I don't know, maybe you have a different opinion. That's what is great about matching cheese and wine. The red is from Italy, is 100% Merlot, and I was saying earlier, is a bit of an unusual Merlot. It's not the big, plummy, dansomy kind of red, really rich and with loads of alcohol. Is a lighter style of Merlot, only still vat fermentation, lots of juiciness. And I tried it with some of the cheeses, and in a very surprising way, it works beautifully with the first cheese, with the Cremant de Bourgogne, that generally is a brilliant match for white wine. But it's this light fruitiness that you get there with this kind of fruit acidity that you find, that I think is the perfect match. It's from Umbria, from central Italy. Is a beautiful region. I mean, we are very close to Tuscany. It's the only region in central Italy that doesn't have any access to the sea. It's not overly touristic like exactly Tuscany. So if you're ever in Italy, that's a region to consider. Beautiful, and great wines and amazing food. Kevin, have you tried?
Yeah, so I think you want to get back to the agenda fairly fast, so I'm not going to keep this too long, but beautiful wine, and it's beautiful wine with cheese. My favorite combination was to try that Crozier blue cheese, a little bit of the fig paste, and that red wine. Try that on one of the crackers, so a bit of Crozier blue, a little bit of the fig paste for sweetness, and try it with the red. And munch away on that while you listen to the next presentation, guys. And we'll talk to you again in a bit.
Thank you very much, guys. Manny, over to you. And I can see your screen.
Super, thanks very much. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Manny Leon. I'm a Senior Account Director at Alert Logic, who provide cybersecurity services. And I'll get into a bit more detail as we go through the next 10 minutes. So as a company, who are we? Well, we've been around 20 years, which is quite long in the tooth for a cybersecurity firm. But we were sort of bedded in supporting and securing data centers originally in on-premise environments, and that's migrated now into the cloud and very much in the AWS environment. But we see companies working in a hybrid or multi-cloud capacity, and we can cover all sort of manner of different permutations, really. We've got about 4,500 customers under management today, and we operate across the globe. We've got major hubs within the US in Houston and in the UK in London and Cardiff. A big change happened in March of this year where we were acquired by a company called Help Systems. So we went from about £100 million turnover organisation and 650 people to overnight a 3,000 employee organisation with $1 billion turnover and 30,000 clients. So the journey ahead is a good one, I hope. Generally with these things, there's a lot more investment, so the service can be enhanced and developed at pace, I would hope. Type of customers that we deal with are pretty broad ranging. Some of the poster child ones from a UK perspective and Ireland perspective are in the slide deck there. The reality is it's any organisation between 50 and 2,000 employees who have a shortfall within their security posture and their security team, which tends to be quite a lot of organisations. What Alert Logic does as a proposition is a service called MDR, or Managed Detection and Response. And that's doing two things. In the first instance, it's reducing the likelihood of an attack happening on your IT infrastructure. So it's looking at vulnerabilities and threats coming down the track. And if we can catch those before it hits your environment, that's a good thing. It's not causing you a problem. The reality is somewhat different. Most organisations, if not all, will be breached at some point. And I would ask the audience as to how many have maybe suffered a ransomware attack. And I'd be surprised if a number of hands didn't go up, because it's that prevalent nowadays. But when an attack happens, it's how we remediate and fix that as quickly as possible. So the way our service works, it's a piecing together of different technologies. So apologies for the acronyms and initialisms, but SOC, SIEM and SOAR, you can see what those are on the bottom right-hand side. But ultimately, it's an end-to-end security proposition. What we're doing is we're taking information from your infrastructure and your applications into the Alert Logic platform and analysing that in real time and detecting any anomalies or threats that need to be looked at immediately. And when we see something that is of high or critical nature, our analysts will pick that up, analyze it, and then come back to the customer within 15 minutes with a remediation, giving customers complete peace of mind. And that's done on a 24/7, 365 capability. And why it's important to secure your environment, and certainly the journey to the cloud in particular, is we've seen a huge level of digital transformation within organizations over the last few years. And companies are straddling both on-premise and public cloud services like AWS. And gone are the days where you'd have a team of people who are proficient on-premise, able to then cover the AWS environment. And that's where a partner like Bytes really comes in and adds value in terms of delivering a managed service to support your AWS environment. From a security point of view, there's gaps in the security posture when organizations move into these new environments, and that's where Alert Logic certainly come into play. There's a huge talent shortage globally. There's 3 million cybersecurity jobs unfulfilled. So if you have any teenage daughters or sons who want to find a career path, it pays pretty well and there's loads of jobs out there. So maybe not a bad area to get into. But the problem with organizations, they'll find a suitable person to come in and support their security, but within a couple of years, that person's been trained up and when it will invariably move on. What Alert Logic do to combat that is we bring graduates in from university. So the reason we have a security operations centre in Cardiff is that Cardiff runs a very effective cybersecurity degree. So we bring analysts in at a junior level and then give them career progression so they stay with us for a long time. There's a ton of tools out there, so many widgets and services that you can buy to provide security wraps on your environment. And it's really hard to know what is the right thing to do. And when you do buy those tools, you need to train people internally to manage and monitor and work those tools, which is quite complex and expensive to do. And then the bad guys are getting much better. So the threat actors, as we call them, are developing ever more imaginative threats that will cause a problem in client environments. And what we're seeing from the analysts is that Gartner expect by 2 years' time that about 40% of mid-sized enterprise organizations will just be using MDR as their security technology of choice. And the reason it's important is that breaches are on the rise. There's been some really high profile breaches in the news over the last couple of years. The likes of British Airways being fined 180 million quid, Fatface being ransomware to the tune of 1.45 million. Interesting side fact on that, there was a negotiation between the threat actor, the hacker, and Fatface online, which is published actually. And Fatface originally were offering to pay around £500,000. The threat actors knew that the cybersecurity insurance policy would pay out about 3 million quid. So they met in the middle of that value. It's pretty scary what these people can find out once they're in your environment. And ransomware is a biggie because it's a piece of malware that threatens to publish your company's personal data, and it will block access to you accessing your systems and that personal data until a ransom's paid. And those ransomware attacks have been surging through 2021 and indeed through 2022. A lot of it has been heightened because of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Actually, we've seen as a company a 30% uptick in cyber threats in the last couple of months, which is significant. But the ransomware attacks are expensive. So whilst the payouts on average are just over £400,000, the average cost is actually over £3 million because of a ransomware attack. And that's because of downtime to your systems, the tools that you need to buy in to, again, mitigate the holes that are being breached within the environment. Insurance premiums will increase, but the biggest one is reputational damage. And do you ever really recover from that if you're a high profile breach that's been in the news? Perhaps not. So an alert logic solution with MDR will provide that fully end-to-end integrated security service that maybe point solutions don't do. When it comes to AWS, we've been a partner of theirs since 2011. So that's 11 plus years now. That's quite long in the tooth for any security operator within the AWS community. And the workloads have been secured to the level that we're now seen as a launch or integration partner for a range of AWS technologies and security services. And what it means is that we can not just detect and respond to threats, but we're able to more easily deploy and assess the logs and the data from the AWS environment from an end-to-end capability. And just by way of an example, to deploy our services typically takes between 2 to 4 weeks. With AWS, we're fully integrated and automated, and it can literally be done within a couple of hours. So that level of integration we have is significant when it comes to integration and interoperability. There's something called the AWS Shared Security Responsibility Model. So in the bottom left, you'll see the dark blue boxes, and that's what AWS or a cloud provider are responsible for fundamentally. What you see in grey is a load of other things that, from a security perspective, you as a customer are responsible for. And they're quite complex and time-consuming things to do: threat detection, log analysis, endpoint monitoring, and so on. So where Alert Logic and Bytes come in is we overlay a huge degree of capability when it comes to addressing some of those security requirements that you will have as an organization, as a one-stop shop. There will still be things like software patching and access management. Bytes may be providing that as part of the managed service, but we do the core grunt work in the middle there in the orange. And when it comes to coverage, I mentioned up front that it's not just AWS that we cover. That's a really core service that we do deliver our MDR service into. But it can be any public cloud. It can be on-premise, whether that's Hyper-V, VMware, and the more modern container type-based services. But it goes deeper than that. We've also transcended into SaaS-based services, so integrating with things like productivity suites, Office 365, G Suite, email security tools like Mimecast. And this isn't exhaustive, this is just a headline of some of the key ones. But what we're able to do there is integrate with those tools and pull log information into the Alert Logic platform. So you as a customer get a single pane view and a security wrap for all these different services. And that goes down lower into traditional network and end user security services, so firewalls and antivirus and so on. And as a company, it's not just about the sales process and walking away and leaving you to your own devices. There's a fully fledged implementation, and this is done in tandem with Bytes as our partner, We tune the environment on an ongoing basis, so you're getting the best and most efficient service. We have a customer success team that work with you on a monthly basis to make sure that the environment is being used correctly, and if there's any holes or gaps in your security posture, we address those as quickly as possible. The underpinning people element is the Security Operations Center. So those people are there to support our customers 24/7, 365. They're available on the phone, via email, via the portal at any point, day or night. So if you have a burning issue at midnight on a Sunday night and you want to get it fixed, you can pick up the phone to us, no problem at all. We've recently launched a feature called Automated Response. So this is to improve that 15-minute SLA even further, whereby we can agree predetermined actions to stop threats when they're hitting your environment by way of pre-agreed playbooks, essentially. And we work with you to create those. And the underpinning thing with all of this is reporting. We get a vast amount of information and data from your environment, and we provide governance and security compliance and auditing reports, so you can report upwards to your customers. It's a fully fledged end-to-end service, and ultimately, working with our partners, we've been acknowledged by IDC as being a perfect fit solution for a customer who doesn't necessarily have the in-house skills or capabilities to run their own security services today. And ultimately, we deliver IT security and peace of mind. If anybody wants to know more, please reach out to your point of contact. I'm now going to pass on to Veeam, who are going to take you on the final leg of the session around backing up on AWS.
Wonderful. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for the time today. You have to bear with me. I'm a little bit under the weather after some long international travel. But it looks like, I think we might have a problem. Do you need to stop sharing, Manny? And then it's telling me only one participant can share at a time.
Bear with me.
Perfect. There we go. And I wish we could.
I can see your screen, Jeannie, but it's not in presentation mode yet. There you go. Perfect.
It is now, right? Okay, perfect. All right, so I think we've heard a lot of interesting speakers today. We heard about cloud optimization, we heard about cloud security, and then Manny just touched a little bit on hybrid. So I want to talk about data protection today and kind of extend that hybrid story. So first, a little bit about who Veeam is. So we have over 400,000 customers globally, #1 market share in EMEA in terms of the data protection market. So our revenue in 2020 was just over 1.1 billion. So quite sizable footprint in this space. And we are really all about hybrid data protection. So I want to talk a little bit about what that means and how we offer data protection along kind of different stages of your cloud journey, regardless of where you might be today. So when we look at hybrid cloud, I think this is a really interesting slide because we surveyed just about 1,800 customers and asked them, physical servers within your data center, virtual machines on host within your data center, and then hosted virtual machines within either hyperscale cloud or regional service providers. And you can see the shifts that happen over time and how COVID has really impacted that shift as well. So by 2023 today, of the 1,800 customers surveyed, about 52% of them expect that 52% of their servers will be hosted in public cloud. So what that means is you need to prepare and you need to think about what does your data protection journey look like along with your cloud journey. So when we look at all the cloud capabilities that exist today, I think really the easiest way that we see a lot of customers kind of getting started on cloud journeys today is backing up to the cloud. So you have your on-prem environments that you've always had, and now maybe you take a secondary backup copy and you decide that you're going to store that in AWS S3. So it's kind of the easiest way to get started. Cloud archival as well. You may think about longer term storage. You might want to look at using Glacier. Cloud, I think, is also commonly used for disaster recovery. If you have any challenges that occur in your on-prem environment, you can fail over to an AWS environment, and then lift and shift, right? So if you have workloads living on-prem today, you may be thinking about what do we want to re-architect? What do we want to migrate? And what does that motion look like? So Veeam can help you get there. We heard a lot about ransomware in the last session as well. So how are you thinking about ransomware protection and what are your recovery options? and your recovery process if you are faced with ransomware. And then backup of Microsoft services as well. So we heard that, I think, from the beginning. It's really interesting if you actually look at the Microsoft infrastructure running like Windows Server on AWS today, there is more of it running on AWS than running in Azure. So when we think about things like M365 backup, it's important to think about object lock and immutability and how leveraging a platform like AWS can help you when you're thinking about storage and backup for M365 or other Microsoft services as well. Cloud native backup. So if you started by backing up to the cloud, using cloud for disaster recovery, maybe did some lift and shift, re-architected some new workloads to run in cloud, how are you now protecting those? And what does that hybrid backup experience look like? So how are you thinking about hybrid data protection as you begin to move workloads to live in the cloud, as well as still have a portion of your environment on-prem? And then if you start using Kubernetes, containers, whether you're using them on-prem today, whether you're using EKS, the AWS service, how you're protecting that too, and making sure that that code as you're building it is also protected. All right, so digging into use cases. So the first one we talked a little bit about, right, just extending to AWS. So for a lot of reasons today, customers face maybe data sovereignty concerns, worried about latency. And so this is just how can you use AWS when your workloads are still running on-prem? So extending there, you're backing up your virtual physical workloads to S3, to Glacier, virtual tape libraries, all within AWS. Once again, we get into that immutable backup. So that becomes a really key consideration when you look at things like M365, where you might want to store backups, and immutability and object lock become really important considerations from a security standpoint, particularly as you look at trying to refute any type of ransomware attack in the future. And then finally, like we already talked a little bit about backing up those other workloads like M365. So it's not just on-prem or not just workloads living in the cloud, but it could actually be workloads from certain SaaS offerings as well. So once you start by extending to AWS, maybe you're ready to take the next phase of your cloud journey and think about what you're migrating to AWS. So Veeam can help you there too. And you can both directly restore any of our Veeam backups to AWS in just a few clicks. So if there was some type of disaster, some type of failure that you had in an on-prem environment, you could use this functionality to do that. But essentially, a migration is really nothing more than a planned disaster. I don't want to say it's a planned disaster, but it's the same exact functionality. If you're able to restore in case of a disaster, you can also restore anytime where you're looking at doing, a planned activity as well. So that easy restore exists to help you get workloads to AWS as well when you're ready to move them there. And then if you're also looking at doing any type of dev test, those capabilities help you do dev tests in the cloud, even if you may just be testing something that you plan to run on-prem in the future, or you want to make sure that it can run on-prem or in the cloud. And then finally, once you have workloads, so if you've gone through, you start by storing some backups in AWS, you've migrated some workloads to AWS, now you want to think about how do we continue with our data protection while those workloads are living in AWS as well. So whether you're using EC2, so using AWS Compute, RDS, EFS, or on the Kubernetes side, EKS, we're able to protect all of those workloads once they're in AWS as well. You have the ability to kind of seamlessly restore them anywhere that you would like to if you decide that you'd like to move them in the future. So it really gives you kind of full flexibility and portability for your workloads, both getting them to AWS and running them once they're there and making sure that they are protected along the way. So when we talk about hybrid, to me, what hybrid really means is that you have one platform that seamlessly addresses your entire environment. So you don't have to worry about different point products for things that you have running in the cloud, things you have running on-prem. You can essentially manage all of them and seamlessly move them. So you have that cloud mobility piece that allows you to back up, recover, and migrate to AWS across any platform. So if you have workloads on-prem, workloads in other clouds, and you'd like to move them, that's what the hybrid platform really enables you to do. And then in case if you are a current Veeam customer today, you may have socket licensing, which is our older model. We've now moved to this universal license format, which really gives you this portability and allows you to take full advantage and have seamless data protection while you do of everything that the cloud can offer. And I'll just leave this as kind of as my last slide here. If you're interested in learning more and trying this for yourself, we do have a great offer right now. You can get 30 days free licenses It's an unlimited amount of licenses, so you can deploy as many as you like in your environment. Take a look at how the technology works. And when you deploy them, we'll give you $250 of AWS cloud credit as well. And then if you decide to buy, there's a great 3-month free offer where you would get 3 months off your first year subscription as well. So there's a link here that can kind of help you if you want to check out this offer. It is also available through AWS Marketplace. And then if you're really still wondering, like, how do you get started with your journey? There's a great offering from Bytes as well, Data Shield with Veeam, that can help you kind of start moving some of your backups and start taking advantage of the capabilities that AWS has to offer. And that is it from me. So I'll turn it back over, I think, to you, Matthew, for Q&A.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ginny, and thanks, Manny, as well. I think a great way to summarize this webinar today, and as I mentioned, it's Journey to the Cloud, and we wanted to ensure that we encapsulate all the things that you need to think about when either moving to the cloud, or you're already in the cloud and you want to take that next step into modernization, or you want to ensure that you're reducing costs. I'm hoping that today is kind of give you a bit of an understanding of what these technologies and the partnership with Bytes can bring around securing, controlling, backing up, and migrating, modernizing those workloads. And you've seen the value today. We are well open for questions. I did have a couple privately, but feel free to come off mute if you wanted to go old school and ask me directly, and obviously any of the speakers on the call today. If not, I'll go through the couple of the questions that we got on the chat. Perfect. So I think the first question, let me just get it up, was from on the direct chat from Olukayode. So apologies if I butchered that, but I gave my best go. And can I report from a previous analysis we used, so a sustainability analysis performed by Microsoft? It's a really good question. It's one we get asked a lot of, and the answer is it's a bit more difficult. So we understand that you may be doing what's called a Movere assessment with Azure, and you feel like you've done a lot of work there, and you want to just see if you can just replicate that and go down the easy street. The OLA, or the optimization licensing assessment that Stuart and Simon have referenced today, does a lot of stuff around right sizing, application dependency mapping, and it also looks at SQL optimization to see if you can reduce the core count, and indeed then reduce costs on your SQL licensing in AWS. So they're quite different, and they give different results. So what I find is the best way to do it is to move with the fully funded cloud migration assessment with Amazon and Bytes, because it's pretty low touch. We'll have a project manager walking through the whole process, and we can get results for you within 4 weeks. And it allows us to get all that data so that we can create that TCO presentation that Simon walked through, which gives you understanding of funding available from Amazon and all the other services that are wrapped around, including backup. And thank you. I did say your name correctly, which is good to hear. Couple of other questions. One for Logic. In terms of the mix between kind of your machine learning and AI, that kind of automated software technology, and then actual people in the background delivering that service, and in terms of SLAs on response times, could you just give a bit of an overview of what that is?
Yeah, sure. The threats and the risks that get flagged in the platform are categorized as low, medium, high, or critical. Low and mediums are kept from an audit purpose point of view, but don't need a remediation act immediately. There's something that can be done in time. So that might be a patch, for example. If something is going to cause a problem to the customer environment, we score that within the platform, and that would dictate whether it was high or critical. And that's when a security analyst will actually get involved in that 15 minutes, look at the data, the metadata of the problem, and then go back to the customer with a remediation and a fix to make sure that that's not causing a problem in the environment. Everything is then kept for a 12-month period as well. So if you ever need to revisit historical events and activities, it's all there and logged centrally.
Perfect. Thanks so much. One for Veeam through the chat was around, would we need to upgrade or pay for extra licensing if we're an existing Veeam customer to port over to AWS as well as our on-premise backup location?
So the answer to that is it's going to depend on what type of existing licensing you have. And regardless of any type of licensing, you can always back up to AWS as a storage location. So that is included in the licensing that you have. If you have workloads running in AWS today that you want to protect, you would need to have the universal license formats. But there is a migration path if you have traditional socket licenses to get to the universal license as well.
Okay, thank you. Looking at a question from Mark there, we struggle a little with RDS and IOPS. If we select a larger disk, we get more elastic IOPS, but if we still hit the ceiling from time to time, so then we have to switch to fixed IOPS, but it's proving expensive. We only peak every now and then. Mark, is this you're an existing AWS customer, I'm presuming?
Yeah. So we're running RDS for the last year or so, and in general, we were on just taking the default elastic IOPS, and everything was working fine. We have a busy enough server, and we increased the disk space a little bit more. The disk space way beyond what we require for storage, but by increasing it, we get more IOPS based on the size of the storage, right? But then we still start. Well, initially we ran into terrible performance problems. We couldn't understand why this performance was, and it took us a while to realize that the disk has been throttled because we were reaching the end of our elastic credits for storage for elastic IOPS, right? So apart from the fact that was very frustrating because it took us some days and we couldn't understand what was wrong with our RDS server, and it was that we just didn't have any IOPS left in the bank. So then we pre-select then, let's say 2,000 or 3,000 IOPS. And I see that we need that at 10 o'clock on Friday mornings. And for the rest of the week, the machine is absolutely idle. And it's costing hundreds of euro. It's not insignificant fee for a very short space of time. So I don't think there's anything really AWS can do for us on that, but it's either just a little bit too hot or a little bit too cold, and we haven't been able to find the Goldilocks place there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before I jump in with my view on it, Carl, I see that you've got. I know that you haven't got an update for us right now, but it might be worth sharing a few sentences on that.
Yeah, sure thing. So we're going to have a product called Spot Storage that's in early access at the moment. It's kind of in a recommendation mode. But what that's going to do is watch your EBS storage, for example, watch how much you use it. And I think it was like, you said 10 a.m. on a Monday or something. It would basically turn it up to a higher performance tier for the duration that you need it. And then when you don't need it, it'll turn it back down to a lower one. So it'll automatically cost optimize in matching your usage profile.
If it had auto increment like is on the T3s, Carl, that would be absolutely great. Then you charge me $10 for what I use on a Friday morning, and for the other 730 hours of the month, I'm back to my elastic IOPS, which you're describing. That's exactly actually the solution to the problem we get hit if we don't have it. We get hit financially if we do have it, and if we jack up the disk to a 4 terabyte disk, we get hit as well for storage that we don't need. So we're kind of losing in all three scenarios. What you just described probably would fix it for us.
Yeah, it's the aim of the game. But I'm afraid I don't have it for you right now. So sorry, but we'll have something that we can, if it's still affecting you by then, maybe we could revisit. Yeah,
and I think just from my perspective, a really interesting point and one that is repetitive within the Amazon landscape is funding. And we've talked a lot about the funding for migration and modernization today, but there's also funding available for reviewing your existing AWS workloads. For those that are new to the cloud, this is something for as a benefit or a value add when you do, or if you do migrate. But there's something called a well-architected review, which follows the well-architected framework within Amazon. And Bytes get $5,000 per production workload in Amazon to review those workloads across the 6 pillars of well-architected best practices. So those include things like cost, security, resilience, performance, operational excellence, and they've just added a 6th this year for sustainability. And that funding would be able to cover some remediation as well. So we can look at that specific workload, Mark, and see if there's any other solutions out there that can support. And that engagement would be fully funded by Amazon. And the reason they do that is because they take a massive investment into their customers. One of their leadership principles, Stuart will say, is customer obsession. So they want to ensure that you guys are getting the best customer experience at the lowest cost. So Mark will take that one offline. And yeah, thanks for your question.
So Matt, if you wanted to engage with us, then how without having to get into subtle details now, but how does that look? Let's
sure,
say,
so, I mean,
if somebody puts their hand up and said, I'm interested in that, how does that, we consider ourselves reasonably familiar. To be honest, I never thought about asking AWS to help us to figure out what we need, because kind of thought we know it, but what you've just said here and what I got from that is, well, probably we don't know as much as we thought we did.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think best thing to do maybe, Mark, is for us to set up a separate call next week, and I'll pull in your AWS account manager as well as your Bytes account manager, and we can discuss options for you, because I appreciate everyone sitting here waiting to try the third and final wine. So thank you everyone for your questions. Obviously, we'll be in touch after this, so please, I'm pleased to hand over to Kevin and Enrico. But just before I do, I just wanted to take some time again to thank all of our sponsored speakers today. They're really strong and strategic partners for us, and they are top of the game in what they do. So thanks again for everyone joining, and enjoy your last bottle and the rest of your evenings. Over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Matt. So I hope you managed to try some of that wine or the two wines while you were listening to all of the very interesting things that I haven't got a notion about. So I'm going to pass you over to Enrico in a second, and we'll taste our third one. But please, if you have any questions about any of the cheeses or any of the wines that you have been tasting, or a general question about cheese or wine that's on your mind, you can use the chat box or just unmute yourself, as Matt said, old style. We'll take the questions that way as well. So whatever suits you. So please, any questions about anything that we're talking about this evening, or any cheese and wine questions, please feel free to ask. Enrico, what's our third bottle?
Third bottle is here. This is actually a Prosecco. It's not labeled as a Prosecco anymore because they changed the rules, and if you ask me, they made a glorious mess with all the labeling in Prosecco. But is from the Prosecco area, so we are in Veneto, near Treviso, beautiful hills. The grape is Glera, 100%, and is a delicious bottle of wine. It's very simple, uncomplicated. Is we don't need to always drink very complex and deep and super fancy wines. Sometimes there is the need for something just refreshing and slightly aromatic and just yummy, like this wine. I was tasting it, with the salami, with some of the cheeses. It was quite nice with the cheddar, and also with the Crème Bourgogne. But in fairness, is the kind of wine that it doesn't work with anything, but it works perfectly with everything, because it's just what you want, piece of cheese, some crackers or bread, a couple of slices of salami, and the glass of this is the best idea of picnic that I can think of. If it's a beautiful day like today in Dublin, you can sit outside. If not, you sit inside and you enjoy thinking the beautiful weather that one day we're gonna get here in Ireland. So that's exactly what this wine is, and I really, really like it. Nice, beautiful, fresh acidity and yummy.
Really nice, Enrico. I actually really liked it with the cheddar. I thought it was that Haggerty's cheddar it's not too mature. There's a little bit of sweetness still in it. I thought it was a lovely combination. And we all know nothing beats a bit of a cheddar cheese sandwich with a glass of Prosecco. It's what we should all have for our tea every evening. Yeah. I have a question here from Anthony, who is asking about the rind of the cheese and whether to eat or not. And actually, it's something I should have preempted because it's a question every time we do a tasting that people ask. And the simple answer is there is no answer. There's no correct, right or wrong. It really depends on the cheese and it depends on yourselves. So, you know, eat as you like. Some people like to eat the rind, some people don't. As I said, it depends from cheese to cheese. So something like that first crema de Bourgogne, that really creamy one with the white rind, which would be like a camembert rind, or that, the rind tends to be very mild. And so I would eat it. With something like the Goubine, where the rind is a little bit thicker, a little bit more gritty, then I like to taste the cheese without the rind and then with the rind, because the rind tends to be a little bit more intense and can overpower some of the more subtle flavors. With something like the cheddar, I would reach right up to the rind, but I wouldn't eat the actual rind because it can be a little bit gritty. But it's really up to everybody. The general rule is on the hard cheeses, not so much, but make sure and eat just under the rind because some of the most interesting flavors are there. On the soft and semi-soft, if you like, and you'll find that if you like milder flavors, then you won't so much like the rind. If you like stronger flavors, then you will. But like all of these things, there should be no rules around them, and it's very much up to each of you as individuals. Any other questions? Please do ask, as I said. So yeah, so nice selection, Enrico. What was your favorite cheese, or did you have one particular combination that worked for you?
Well, you know me, and the Lys de Bourgogne, or Crémeux de Bourgogne, as we want to call it. I can stop eating it when I have it in front of me, and I really like the way it works with the red, with the Salto del Cieco, because it's the proof that there are no rules in matching cheese and wine, because technically it shouldn't work, because it's a cheese that is in a way made for white wines, but it works with that red. It's unique, it's beautiful. They really work with each other. It's one of those
beautiful combinations.
Surprises.
You can't go wrong with that cheese. And before we let you go, folks, because I have a feeling that maybe some of you aren't in a place or a mood that you're maybe drinking 3 bottles of wine and eating a lot of cheese just right now, so you want to maybe keep it for later on or for the weekend. So in terms of keeping all of these cheese and wines, whether you've opened them or not, are going to be perfect all the way through the weekend. So don't worry. Just keep them wrapped or rewrap them in the cheese paper or that we gave you, or a little bit of, you know, for the hard cheese like the cheddar, a bit of cling film is absolutely fine. It's a very sturdy cheese, or a bit of baking parchment. Keep them in the fridge, well wrapped, but make sure and take them, when you do go to eat, make sure and take them out a good half hour before you're going to eat them, because they do need to come up a little bit warm, or all the flavors are inhibited. On the wines, Enrico, if you have actually opened any of these, what's the best way to keep them for a few days?
Well, in the fridge, even the red, leave them in the fridge, and put back the cork, because it's the best way to proceed. I don't know. I have the feeling that it's not going to be a problem to keep the wine for the weekend. I think they're going to go way before that, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, when you want to keep a wine for a couple of days, white or red, keep it in the fridge. Close it. You know, if you have a screw cap, use it. If it's a sparkling wine, you know, get yourself one of those stoppers. And for any other wine, put the original cork back in. So try to keep it there.
But for that sparkling, Enrico, sorry, a bit of cling film over the top of the bottle really is fine as well.
Or even yeah, absolutely. You know, a little bit of cling film, that will do. But you know, there was a theory years ago that if you put, you know, a teaspoon,
never worked for me anyway.
No, I mean, I know better uses for a teaspoon rather than
definitely better uses for a bottle of champagne.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's the
So
that's the best way to do it.
And then serving the wines, you know, tell us a little bit before we go about temperature, because it's a funny thing, but it actually really does. I mean, as I said with the cheese, not too cold, definitely not too warm, but wine, it can make a huge difference, can't it?
Absolutely. Okay, I find that there is the tendency to drink the whites too cold and the reds too warm. Me personally, I got to a point where I drink pretty much everything at the same temperature. You know, the white's a little bit colder, but when you read on a bottle of wine serve chill, it means that there is something to hide there, because you know, the colder it is and the less you can get the flavors and the aromas. So depending a bit on the style of wine, if it's a white wine with high acidity like an Albarino or some Sauvignon Blanc, well, drink it a little bit colder, let's say around 8-9 degrees.
Just for people, your fridge tends to be around 3 or 4. If you take a bottle of wine from your fridge, it's probably about 3 degrees.
Exactly. So, you know, consider that in 10 minutes you get 1.5 degrees in the glass. So if you take it off the fridge at 4 and you wait a few minutes and you pour yourself a glass, you know, in 4 or 5 minutes you get to the perfect temperature. So that's for the whites, for the lighter whites. For the richer whites, like the one that we had today, maybe 9-10 degrees. You know, there is quite a lot of alcohol in this, so it benefits from slightly higher temperature. And for the reds, don't go over 16 or 17 degrees unless we're talking about Amarone or Châteauneuf-du-Pape or something really big and really rich in style. Because when you read on the label serve at room temperature is a concept that was created way before central heating. So room temperature was considered, you know, 15 or 16 degrees. And that's the perfect temperature for me for many reds, because too warm, you get too much of the tannic structure, you get too much of alcohol coming out. And of course, if they are too cold, you know, you like in cheese, you know, you lose lots of the flavor. So, you know, play a little bit with temperature, find the one that you find more interesting for yourself.
I've heard you say, Enrico, before, and it's an interesting, I've done it, is, you know, if you're bored and have a bottle of wine, is pour a glass from the fridge, leave it out for a few hours and really bring it up warm, and then try the same wine at a few degrees lower. And it's like different, sometimes it can be like drinking a completely different wine. Absolutely.
That's a great way to understand how temperature can affect. But it's the same thing with cheese. You know, if you get the cheese out of the fridge and you eat, they all taste pretty much of very little. You know, and the warmer they are, and the better they are.
Okay, thank you, Enrico, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kevin.
I hope that either you have enjoyed or will enjoy the cheeses and wines. Really nice selection, some lovely salamis in there as well. So whenever you do, enjoy them. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.